All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, Yahawashi, BAHASHAM, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles, the great millstone that taught us the truth. Salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins with 144,000. Yahawah, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jehovah. BAHASHAM is in the name. Yahawashi, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. The Rakakwadash, which is the Holy Spirit. I'm the brother I will lump you with the gym at Chicago camp out here in Chicago. Come back at you with another lesson. And Lord, I hope this lesson is edifying to the hopeful right select, the ones of the household of faith. Once again, I hope this lesson is edifying. I'm just simply talking to this lesson, the Lord, Yahweh Shemal Shai is going to be the one to give us justice, man. Because here you have it, every time an injustice happened to Jake, man, what's the first thing they do? They basically look for to Esau Edom to get that justice, man. Not understanding now ultimately that the Lord was the one to put us under the hand of the so-called white man to be afflicted. And ultimately the Lord is going to be the one to give us justice, man. Every time a Jake is killed or whatever, every time an injustice happened to Jake, what does, the rest of our people, the mass majority of our people do? They march and they basically go to this government, to actually, to try to receive some type of form of justice, man. Jake, even to this day, man, is trying to get, you know, basically, a handout, from this government. The East Edom is not going to give our people shit, man. As they call it, what, reparations. Our people is trying to march to get reparations, from this devil, from this government. Hey, but ultimately the true justice is going to come, from Yahweh Shem Shah. The true reparations, the true justice is going to come from Yahweh Shem Shah, man. Ultimately, what, when he's, he raises up out of this hill, and ultimately what, put the other nations, starting with the so-called white man, into captivity. But I'm gonna start off right here. This is the book of Zechariah 2 and 8. Because just know the heinous things that these other nations has done to our people, man. Hey, starting with the so-called white man, the rape, the robbery, the murder. Yahweh Shemal Shah hasn't forgot about that, man. We're gonna have our enemies under our foot, man. We're gonna lynch them, man. We're gonna put their people to death. Starting with the so-called white man. The Lord hasn't forgot about these things, man. And it's written throughout the scriptures, man, what we're gonna do to these other nations, starting with the Edomites. So this is the book of Zechariah 2 and 8. It says, "For thus saith Yahweh of hosts, after the glory hath he sent me unto the nations, which spoiled you." Right, and all these nations have spoiled us, man. Hey, Psalms 83. Lord will not can get that, but all these nations conspired together to ultimately to oppress us and bring us down, man. And it started with the so-called white man. Ishmael, Moab, Ammon. All these nations conspired together to ultimately to oppress us. And ultimately, what these other nations, we was already down and out, from what what these devils has done to our people. But ultimately, what these other nations is, taking part of it too. Read that again. Start back at the top. Zechariah 2 and 8 says, For thus saith Yahweh of hosts, after the glory have he sent me unto the nations, was spoiled you, for he that toucheth you touches the apple of his eye." Right, because what, we're the Lord's, we're the holy people unto Yahweh Shemal Shah. As Deuteronomy 7 and 6 says, thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy power. Yahweh thy power has chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth, man. And look how these nations has treated us, man. Ishmael, Esau Edom, cutting our rods off, lynching, basically cutting the fetus out the woman's stomach, man. Hey, stumbling on the fetus. These are different things, you can read about throughout history that this devil has done to our people, man. And ultimately what is going to be a recompense, for that. Everything that this devil has done to our people. Let me actually grab this real quick. I believe it's in Jeremiah 30 and 16, if I'm not mistaken. Let me grab it. Let me go to my Bible app. And Yahweh Shemal Shah hasn't forgotten the atrocities that happened to the nation of Israel, man. But this is the book of Jeremiah. I was actually already on the book. That's the spirit. This is the book of Jeremiah 30 and 16. Let me see if I can start up though. Let's see. I'm gonna just get to the point. This is the book of Jeremiah 30 and 16. It says, "Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, And all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. And right, who devoured us, man? All these other nations. Psalms 83. I'm gonna get it, in a second. But all these other nations have devoured us, man. Hey, made money off of us. Hey, how was America established? By rape, robbery, and murder, man. Hey, free slave labor. We built up this man society, and ultimately what? We're going to do the same to them, starting with the so-called white man. As the scriptures say, continual employment. They're going to build up our kingdom, which is what? The kingdom of heaven. They're going to build it up, man. We're going to whip their backs. And the difference is we're going to have spiritual power, man. Because even the scripture said we're going to meditate terror. And that's true justice that we're going to get from Yahawashi Shah, man. You know, not reparations from this damn devil, man. Because all the atrocities that this devil has done to our people, man, no, amount of money cannot ultimately suffice of the rape, robbery, and murder that was ultimately happened to our people, man. I'm gonna read this again. This is the book of Jeremiah 30 and 16. It says, therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, who's the adversaries? Hey, Psalms 83. All the other nations, man. Every one of them shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. Right? Because starting with this devil, the so-called white man, all these other nations had their way with us, man. Just look at the different kingdoms that we served under, man. Hey, the Babylonian Empire, man, ancient Babylon. You had the Persian Medes. You had the Greeks, you had the Romans. Here in America today, man. You know, all these heathen nations had us in captivity, man. And who treated us the worst? This devil, this so-called white man. You know, you had devils like Antiochus Epiphanes, man. He basically what killed a lot of our people, man. You can't forget about Alexander's generals, man. You know, hey, even up to this very point right now, man. We're still being killed by the sword by this damn devil, man. You know, injustices that Jake faced, and Jake wanna get reparations from this devil, man. After all this shit this devil has done to us, no amount of money can suffice the things that this devil has done to our people, man. Let's actually get this because, like I said, it says all that devour thee shall be devoured, right? Let's get this in Psalms 83. This is the book of Psalms 83 and 1. It says a song or a psalm of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. It says, for lo, thy enemies make it tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Right? Who is the hidden ones, man? Hey, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, because in Jeremiah 17 it talks about how ultimately how we was discontinued from our heritage. You know, these devils stole our nationality, stole our heritage. They took our God away from us. And what did they give us, man? They gave us Jesus Christ. They gave us these different idols to serve to ultimately to keep us away from our power, man. You know, losing our heritage and most importantly losing our God, man, was one of the most you know worst things that happened to our nation, man. These devils knew what they were doing, man, when they ultimately what gave us JC, that so-called white man, man. Which goes back to what's that Cesare Borgia, you know, even before that Serapis Christus, you know. But I'm gonna continue in this. Psalms 83 and 4 says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance, right? Being our heritage, being our language, out of us, man, taking away our God, taking away our power, which is Yahweh Shai. It says, verse 5, it says, for they have consulted together with one consent, they are a confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes. It says Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, right? Amalek. It mentioned Edom twice, man. It says Edom and Amalek. Amalek being that chief tribe of the nation of Edom, man. Because even in the scripture said who shall have war with Amalek from generation to generation, man. Hey, Amalek is the one that controls the whole world at this moment, man. The Ish people, the small hats. It says the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, right? Because ultimately what gave me the inspiration to do this lesson, I was watching the beloved Elder Malcolm's video, and the first video Elder Malcolm had played was going into an Edomite, how basically said after 400 or 500 years, of what America was built upon, which is rape, robbery, and murder. He said this is karma coming, back on us for all these different atrocities, man, that we have did to the, hey, he mentioned the so-called Negroes, the so-called and Native Americans, man, Not only, the southern kingdom, but also the northern kingdom that these, atrocities happen to, man. Hey, the northern kingdom was also taken into captivity, man. Hey, hey, Gad, hey, it's a thing called the Trail of Tears, man. A lot of, Gadites, which are the so-called Native Americans, perished. So this devil has a lot to pay for, but ultimately we're going to get this justice from Yahweh BAHASHAM Yahawashi, man. And like I mentioned before, not no amount of money can suffice what this devil has done to our people, man. You know, hey, payback and recompense is coming. Let's actually get this. Let me see. This is the book of Amos 1 and 11. It says, thus saith Yahweh, it says, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with a sword, right? Who was Esau's brother, man, Jacob, his whose name was eventually turned to changed to Israel, Yasharallah. It says, because he did pursue his brother with a sword, right? How did he ultimately do that, man? Slavery, pursuing our people, lynching our people, you know, feeding our babies to alligators, different things of that nature, man. This devil has done to us. Cut off our, men's rods, cut off the fetuses out the baby's, the woman's stomach, the fetuses, and they end up stumbling on it. A lot of that happened to the, to the Taino Indians, man, the Northern Kingdom. It says, because he did pursue his brother with the sword and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. And exactly right, man. You know, ultimately what this devil has done to our people, man. As Ezekiel, I was at 35, that perpetual hatred. And the Lord hasn't forgot about this, man. Because as I started off with that Zephaniah, those that touch you touch the apple of my eye, you know. So the Lord, is going to give vengeance on our behalf, man. And it's going to start with Yahawashi. Yahweh sent his son Yahawashi back to get vengeance, for ultimately starting with the elect, man. For the elect. This is the book of Ezekiel 35 and verse 5. It says, I'm gonna start at 1. Ezekiel 35 and 1. It says, moreover, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto me, saying, son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. And that's what we're doing, man. We're prophesying against this damn devil, man. It says, verse 3, it says, and say unto it, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. All right, and the Lord is starting to stretch out his hand against these Edomites, man. And these Edomites are starting to lose badly, man. Now all of a sudden it's hard for, the so-called white man to make a living, in this society today, man. Things are getting extremely tough for them, things of that nature. They're losing their jobs. They're starting to complain, things of that nature. They thought Donald Trump was going to be that great white hope. Now all of a sudden they see their world is starting to collapse, and they seeing this in real time, man. It says, verse 5, it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity and the time that their iniquity had an end. Right. After, even after slavery, man, this damn devil had, his foot up our ass, man, because even coming out of slavery, Jake, established different, thriving towns across America, man. What ended up happening? Esau Edom, became jealous, and they ultimately end up, setting fire to these different cities. The U.S. government end up bombing, these different cities. These are, this is the tab that Esau Edom has to pay, man. The Lord hasn't forgot about that. Hey, just look what the Lord put his own people through, man. You think the Lord is not going to, pay back, these heathen nations, man, starting with Esau Edom? They're going to get it the worst. Because even the scriptures, it says, thou shalt meditate terror. Just think about that, man. And what? Israel, starting with the elect, we're going to have spiritual powers, man. And they're going to be in captivity for 1,000 years, man, building up the kingdom of heaven. How about Shemel Shai hasn't forgot about what this devil has done to our people, man? These things have to be paid back, man. Like we have to pay back, ultimately we have to pay for what we have done in our past lives, even up to this point, man. The Lord bringing us through slavery, us having to serve under our enemies. Hey, how about Shemel Shai is going to do the same thing plus more, to these heathen nations, starting with Esau, man. The Lord hasn't forgot, just hey, this land America is filled and soaked with blood, man. This is the book of Ezekiel 35 Because you even have Jakes, even alive today, you know, 80s and 90s years old, witness, a lot of Jakes getting lynched, witness towns getting burned down. You still have Jakes present today that lived through that, man. You know, even we're living through it to this very moment. You still finding Jake being hanged up on trees, man. Hey, the Lord hasn't forgot about that. You know, this is the book of Ezekiel 35 and 6. It says, "Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord Yahawah, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee." Right, and we know Esau Edom, he was blessed with the sword, and ultimately with that sword, because even Micah 2:2 says they covet fields and take them by violence. And that's what this devil has done. And they're proud, they're different forefathers. They're proud of their forefathers of basically doing these different acts. They still, we're on their forefathers like, hey, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, people of this nature. They pride themselves in their forefathers. And what are their forefathers? They're nothing but murderers and thieves, man. You know? Hey, and ultimately what? The Lord is going to pay these devils back. It says, even blood shall pursue thee. Because even the scripture says what? Let me grab it real quick. The Lord is going to render unto them double. Let's grab it real quick. Hey, the Lord hasn't forgotten, man. Hey, we're still going through pains and sufferings to this very day, man. Hey, and BAHASHAM Yahawashi, starting with the elect, hears us, man. Hey, to ultimately what? To bring this devil down. Let me see. This is the book of Revelations 18 and 6. It says, reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she had filled to her double. Meaning what? The things that we went through, they're gonna go through it even worse, man. It says filled to her double. These devils is going to catch it even, and we just can't imagine, man, what we're gonna do to these devils in the kingdom, man. The Lord is gonna give us that spiritual power, man. Hey, just imagine, man, they're gonna be suffering in hardcore bondage for 1,000 years, man. You know, and the elect is gonna be, have the first part in that, man. Lord, when we be up that number, you know. Let me grab this real quick in Numbers. Let me see. I believe it's Numbers 35. Let me see. This is the book of Numbers 35 and 33. It says, "So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, full of blood. It defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it." Right. So ultimately, what? This land, America, is filled with blood, man. Who ultimately shed our blood, starting with these Edomites, man, the so-called white man. Hey, killing our children, killing our women, killing our men, man. Turning our women against the men. This is all Esau's Edom's doing, man. And this land, America, is filled with blood, man. Just think of, the atrocities of the Native Americans, man. Hey, Gad and Reuben, man. This is their land. And ultimately what? What's that? I believe it's 100 million. Hey, estimated even more, man. Hey, coming over here from a boat ride alone, it was estimated 100 million so-called Negroes perish, man. Hey, even to this day, man, you have sharks following that path where the slaves, were sent. Because what? Our people jumped overboard to ultimately to escape, harsh, servitude under these devils, man. Even have sharks to this day following that same path, man, because of the amount of our people the sharks were eating, man. And Esau Edom has to pay for all of that, man. We're coming into the time as Sirach, what's that? Sirach 25 says, see the fall of his enemy. Let's grab that real quick. This is the book of Sirach 25 and 7. It says, "There be 9 things which I have judged in my heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue, a man that have joy of his children." And right, and the kingdom that's to come, man, we're going to have joy in all of that, man. Our children, we're going to be happy, man. We can't, we're in hell right now, man. We can't be happy. We're not living it up right now, man. But ultimately, the kingdom that's to come, man, we're going to have joy in our children. We're going to be happy, man. We're going to be able to live, man, without, worrying about if this devil's going to come up against us, man. No, because what? We're going to be made perfect. We don't have to worry about, these heathens ever overtaking us again, man. It says, "I will utter with my tongue a man that have joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy." And we're living to see the fall of our enemy in real time, man. Because Lamentation says this. This Lamentations 4 and 21, in which I always back up with that second Ezra 6 and 7 on, through 9. But this is the book of Lamentations 4 and 21. It says, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwelleth in the land of Uz. It says the cup. And what is that cup, man? The cup of slavery, the cup of torment. Because we had to surely drink of that cup, right? Hey, this devil is going to surely drink of that cup. It says, the cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked, right? Because right now, what? Hey, this devil is being exposed by the way of the word. A lot of things is coming out on this devil. And what? Everybody is coming up against this devil right now. Hey, the curses are starting to come upon this devil. Hey, everything is going wrong for Esau Edom right now, man. And this is just the beginning, man, of his downfall. It says, thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked. It says, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. All right, and that's what's happening right now, man. Hey, this devil is losing big, man. Everybody's coming up against him right now, man. The whole world hates him. Hey, so this devil is losing big. Hey, because ultimately, what? This devil is even losing his kingdom. The Lord is taking his kingdom down brick by brick, man. Destroying his kingdom economically, destroying the morale of Esau Edom, man. Hey, a lot of things is happening in the real time, as I read that Sirach 25 and 7, man. Hey, he that liveth to see the fall of his enemies, man. And that's a beautiful thing, man. You have Jake's alive, hey, in their 80s, 90s, pushing 100, even in their hundreds, man. Hey, have seen all type of wicked acts, man. And us in this real time right now, man, we're seeing a lot of wicked acts that's going on that this devil has done and continue to do to our people, man. You know? And ultimately, who's going to bring that judgment? Hey, Yahweh's going to send his son Yahawashi back to ultimately what? To ultimately give that recompense and ultimately to give us justice, for what this devil has done to us, man. You know? I'm going to read verse 22 again. This is the book of Lamentations 4 and 22. It says, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. All right, that's happening right now. Because ultimately that cup of slavery, that cup of torment, because ultimately this devil right now is ultimately drinking that cup of the what? The curses. Let's grab that real quick. This is the book of Deuteronomy 30 and 7. It says, and Yahweh thy power will put all these curses upon thy enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. And right, all these nations have persecuted us, man. As I read that Salakia, Psalms 83. I don't know why I was drawing a blank right there. But that Psalms 83 of all these different nations coming up against our people, man, to ultimately what? As the scripture say, let the name of Israel be no more remembrance. But Deuteronomy 30 and 7 says, Yahweh thy power will put all these curses upon thy enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. Right now, all of a sudden, Esau's woman is beginning to act up. All of a sudden, Esau is not prospering in his ways, man. All the curses you could read about in Deuteronomy 28, starting in verse 15 all the way to 68, hey, it's going to come upon our enemies, man. And what? These other nations, starting with the Edomites, is starting to feel that, man. And that's a very beautiful thing, seeing our enemies fall in real time, you know? Let me see. Let's grab this. This is the book of Isaiah 14 and 1. It says, for Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave unto the house of Jacob. Right. Verse 1 is talking about the Israelite foreigners being reconnected back. Well, what? With the into the fold, man. That's the strangers is talking about what? The Israelite foreigners. Verse 2 is the point, though. Isaiah 14 and 2, it says, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors, right? And the Lord is going to give us our enemies for a possession, man. The Lord is going to give us our enemies for a possession, starting with the Edomites, man. Because who caused us the most ill? These Edomites. Because Esau showed no mercy, against our people, man. Hey, whether you were old, whether you were young, a child, a pregnant woman, Esau Edom had no mercy, man. But that's okay, because in the kingdom, we're going to have no mercy on him, Let's grab this. This is the book of Revelation 13 and 9. And this is, the justice we're going to get that Yahweh Shemel Shai is ultimately going to give us, man. This is true justice, man. This is the book of Revelation 13 and 9. It says, if any man have an ear, let him hear, which is what? The understanding. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. All right, this is what we're waiting for, man. To ultimately what? To get ultimately our hands on this damn devil. Because ultimately, Yahweh is going to get send his son Yahweh Shai back, and the Lord is going to give us that power, man. To ultimately what? To bring our enemies down, man. It's going to start with Yahweh Shai, though, because even the scripture says, the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to change us to hunters, man. We're going to be hunting our enemies down and what? Putting them in chains, man. Let me see. This is Ezekiel 25 and 13. Ezekiel 25 and 13 says, therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahawah, I also will stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut out man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of the Don shall fall by the sword. And it says, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they shall do in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord Yahawah. Right? The Lord is going to put his anger within us, man. Because we're not going to get angry enough for what, the Lord is going to give us his anger to ultimately to execute, vengeance upon the heathens, man. So just imagine that, man. On top of the spiritual power that Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to give us, Esau Edom starting with this damn devil is in for a rude awakening, man. And the Lord is going to use us, as the scriptures say, man. Thou art my battle axes and weapons of war, man. But let me grab one more. Let me see. It's in Psalms. Bear with me for a second. Psalms 149. Start at the top. This is the book of Psalms 149 and 1. It says, praise ye the Lord Yahawah, sing unto the Lord Yahweh a new song, and his praise in the congregation of saints. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of Zion be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name in the dance. Let them sing praises unto him with the temper and heart. Right, we're going to praise Yahweh Shemel Shai, man. Once our enemies go down, Yahweh's going to send his son Yahweh Shai back to what? To take this kingdom out, this kingdom down, and ultimately what? To put these devils in chains. And these other nations are going to join them too, right? It says, for the Lord Yahweh take a pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation. All right, that's going to happen on for the elect, man. Because salvation is for the elect of the nation of Israel, man. It says, let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of Yahweh be in their mouth and a two-edged sword in their hand. Because we're going to literally be carrying around a sword, man. To execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishments upon the people. To bind their kings with chains and their numbers with fetters of iron. To execute upon them the judgment written. Dishonor have all his saints. Praise ye the Lord Yahweh. And right, this is what we're waiting on, man. For the Lord to ultimately to what? To give us the heathen for a possession, man. Starting with these damn devils. Well, I said that was going to be the last one, but let me actually, close out with this one, Obadiah. Because true justice is coming. Who's going to bring it, man? Yahweh Shemel Shai, man. It's not going to be a amount of money that these devils can give us to erase the bloodshed that actually happened to our nation, man. I'm gonna get to the point. This is the book of Obadiah 1 and 18. This is what's waiting for Esau Edom, man. Because who dealt with us? The worst. These devils, the so-called white man, these Edomites. And it was going to be the end result after they served their 1,000 years of captivity. Let's read it. And this is true justice that I'm about to read right now. What's going to happen to these devils? Which the Yahweh Shemel Shai, is going to give on behalf of what? The nation of Israel, starting with the elect, man. We're going to see this damn devil burn. This is the book of Obadiah 1 and 18. I could probably start up. I'm going to start at 15. Obadiah 1 and 15. It says, "For the day of Yahweh is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head." Right? Because I believe if we read Joel, what's that, the beginning of the 3rd chapter? How it talks about, we shall sell their sons and daughters afar off, loosely paraphrasing. You know? Verse 15, Obadiah 1 and 15, "For the day of Yahweh is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain," right, us, the Israelites, "so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been." Right. And ultimately that cup, I read, what was that, Lamentations 4, and I believe it was verse 21. Thou shalt drink of that cup. Hey, these nations, starting with Esau, is going to drink of that cup, man. That cup of torment, that cup of slavery. Hey, those curses. It says, "And they shall be as though they had not been, but upon Mount Zion shall be a deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions." So who is our possessions, man? These other nations, starting with this damn devil. As I read in what's that, Isaiah 14 and 2, you know, servants and handmaids, man. It says, verse 18, here's the point. It says, "And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Esau, Slakia." Let me read that again. Obadiah 1 and 18 says, "And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh hath spoken it." And exactly right, man. After this devil served his 1,000 years of captivity, Esau Edom is going to be eradicated off the planet Earth, man. He's going to be exterminated. Him and his whole line is going to be exterminated, man. You know? And the other nations are going to get their lands back. But Esau Edom, man, hey, the nation that dealt with us the most harsh, they're going to be eradicated, man. And that's true justice from BAHASHAM Yahawashi, man. And I'm going to end it off right there. Lord willing, I hope this lesson was edifying to the hopeful rights elect. The brothers and sisters that may be watching this lesson, Lord willing, I hope it was edifying. I want to end up making all praise and glory to Yahweh, BAHASHAM, Yahawashi, BAHASHAM, Rakakwadash. That will honor to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us the truth. And salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. Lord, and I hope this lesson was edifying. Till next time, Kwam Yasharala, Shalom, and Abba. Until next time, Lord willing.